It began with the sound of a credit card hitting the marble counter, clean, decisive, loud enough to silence a five-star hotel lobby. And then, in the blink of an eye, the air snapped. Security. Now, he doesn't belong here. James Miller was used to being overlooked. He moved with quiet assurance, his posture easy, his voice always measured. But here, under the glittering chandeliers of Chicago's Levinson Grand, he was suddenly the center of everything, for all the wrong reasons. He stood out, and not in the way people wanted. His skin was dark as polished walnut, his suit sharp but not flashy. Beside him, his daughter Kayla, no older than 10, clung to the sleeve of his jacket, her gaze bouncing between her father and the circle of staff in starched uniforms forming around them. It should have been a perfect night. A family celebration. Kayla's birthday. Miller had booked the top-floor restaurant weeks in advance, sparing no expense. His platinum card, a card embossed with his own name, James Edward Miller, lay on the marble like a dare. Across the counter, the hotel manager, a man with thin lips and a Harvard tie, studied the card like it was a forgery. He spoke quietly, but the words landed like glass shattering. "I'm sorry, sir. This card can't possibly be yours. I'll have to ask you to leave the property." Miller met the manager's eyes, calm but weary. "Excuse me?" There was no anger, not yet, just that bone-deep tiredness of a man who had walked this road too many times. The manager's smile was brittle. "I'd prefer not to call security, but you're making it difficult." He didn't look at Kayla. "For the comfort of our guests." It happened fast, too fast for sense. The lobby's hush was broken by the heavy tread of security. Two men, both white, built like linebackers, closed in on Miller. "Sir, step away from the desk." Kayla's eyes went wide. "Daddy?" Miller tried to steady her. "It's all right, sweetheart. It's..." One of the guards cut him off. "Hands where I can see them." A hush swept through the room, drawing a circle of well-dressed guests, their curiosity sharpened by the thrill of drama. Waiters froze, plates trembling in their hands. A trio of businessmen in tailored suits leaned in for a better look. The taller guard grabbed Miller's wrist, yanking his arm behind his back. The other began to pat him down, fingers pressing hard against his ribs, his hips. Miller's suit jacket slid off his shoulder. "Take it off!" the man hissed. "We need to make sure you're not stealing anything." Kayla screamed, high, ragged, utterly helpless. "Stop! That's my dad. He didn't do anything." The guard ignored her, pulling Miller's other arm back, twisting, hard enough to make him wince. All around, phones emerged from pockets, screens lighting up with the familiar blue of a camera. Miller caught a glimpse of himself, distorted, half-bent, in the reflection of a gold-plated sign. A spectacle. He tried to hold Kayla's gaze. "Look at me, honey. Just breathe. I'm right here. I promise." But Kayla's voice was lost beneath a wave of whispers. What did he do? Are they arresting him? Maybe he's some kind of scammer. A blonde woman with pearls clutched her purse to her chest, stepping back. "I told you this place was slipping," she murmured to her companion, as if Miller's presence confirmed every suspicion she'd ever had about the world. The manager was on his phone now, voice low but urgent. "Yes. Room comped, of course." "No, I don't care. Just get him out." Miller's heart pounded. He thought about fighting, shouting, anything. But Kayla's face stopped him. She looked so small, so fragile, her dress from the party wrinkled, a blue balloon animal wilting in her hand. His anger burned, but he swallowed it, like he'd done 1,000 times before. And then, just as the guards began to drag him across the lobby, as Kayla sobbed and tried to reach for his hand, someone's phone rang. The sound seemed to split the air. The front doors swung open, flooding the lobby with cold night air. A tall man strode in, expensive overcoat swirling, face taut with shock and fury. The manager paled. "Mr. Callahan, I was just..." he stammered. The newcomer didn't look at him. He looked at Miller, and suddenly the entire lobby seemed to inhale, all at once, waiting for the verdict. But Kayla wasn't waiting. She broke free from the hands trying to hold her back, clambered up onto a velvet chair, and screamed with all the force a 10-year-old could summon. "Stop! My dad is the owner. This is his hotel. That's his name on the card. He owns all of this." For a moment, the world froze. The guards hesitated, glancing at each other, uncertain. The manager's face crumpled, sick with realization. And the newcomer, the man in the overcoat, took one look at Miller and then at the card on the counter, and his voice came out raw, trembling. "Oh God, James, I'm so sorry. I had no idea." But the damage was done. Phones were still recording. Kayla was sobbing now, clinging to her father's side. The lobby, with its gold leaf and polished stone, was silent as a tomb. Miller looked down at his daughter, at her tears and her tiny fists, at the sea of white faces turned toward them in disbelief and discomfort. He felt the weight of every slight, every mistake, every time his skin had been the excuse for someone else's fear. He straightened his jacket. He stood tall, even as the guards released his arms, even as the manager babbled apologies. He met the eyes of every person in that lobby, and he did not look away. Outside, the city lights flickered. Inside, Kayla's scream still echoed, long after her voice had gone quiet. And somewhere, already, the first video was being uploaded. James Miller stood in the lobby of his own hotel, hands still tingling from where security had twisted them, jacket hanging loose, tie crooked. Kayla's scream seemed to hover in the air long after her voice had gone raw. People stared. Some hid behind phones. Others looked anywhere but at the man at the center of it all. The tall man in the overcoat, Callahan, the CEO, hurried forward, his polished shoes whispering apologies with every step. He reached for James's hand, then seemed to realize the absurdity of it, and stopped, frozen by the magnitude of his own failure. "James, please. There's been a terrible mistake." Callahan's voice wavered, eyes darting between James, Kayla, and the shell-shocked manager, whose Harvard tie had wilted with sweat. James glanced down at Kayla, her fingers white-knuckled around his, her breath hiccuping. For a moment, all he saw was her, the child he'd sworn to protect from this exact kind of pain. But protection had its limits, and tonight, the world had shown her just how low those limits went. He knelt to her level, ignoring the crowd, ignoring Callahan, ignoring the cameras still rolling. "Look at me, Kay. You're safe, okay? I'm not going anywhere." She nodded, wiping her nose with the back of her hand, trying to be brave. The anger in her eyes was new, hard-edged, too old for her face. "Why did they do that, Daddy? Why did they hurt you?" He almost said, "Because some people see what they expect to see, not what's there." He almost said, "Because even if you own the building, some folks still see a threat, not a father." He almost said, "Because the world isn't fair." But she was 10, and there was no comfort in the truth. So he just held her and let the question hang in the air. Callahan's voice broke through. "James, let's go upstairs, my office, private." He cast a withering look at the manager, who was visibly shaking now, and barked at security. "You're dismissed, all of you, right now." But the guards hesitated, as if afraid to release what they had already broken. The taller one met James's eyes. No apology, just confusion and a flicker of resentment. It was always easier to follow orders than to face what you'd done. James stood, drawing Kayla to his side. His back was straight, movements measured, but inside his head the old battles raged, the ones he fought every day since he was a boy on the South Side, the ones no one ever saw. Don't give them the satisfaction. Don't let them see you angry. Don't let them call you dangerous. They rode the elevator in silence, Callahan jabbing the penthouse button 3 times before shoving his hands in his pockets. Kayla leaned into her father, her small body pressed against his side. The carpeted walls seemed to close in, pressing the humiliation tighter, the words echoing in James's ears. "We have to check. We have to be sure. We have to protect our guests." He could see his reflection in the elevator doors, his suit, his skin, his daughter's frightened eyes. "You built this. And still they see a suspect, not a man." The doors slid open to a hush of gold and glass. Callahan's office was bigger than some people's apartments, the city skyline laid out in a glittering panorama. But tonight, it felt as small and suffocating as a cell. Callahan gestured to a couch, but James stayed standing. Kayla clambered up beside him, arms crossed, chin trembling but stubborn. Callahan spoke quickly, his voice pitched low. "James, you know this isn't how we do things. You know I'd never." James cut him off, his voice level. "But it happened. In front of my daughter, in front of every guest, and you didn't stop it." Callahan's eyes darted to the side, shame painting red blotches across his cheeks. I wasn't here. If I had known, but you are here now," James said quietly. "And so are the cameras." A thick silence settled, punctuated only by the city's distant hum. Kayla fidgeted, her fingers worrying the hem of her party dress. The manager appeared in the doorway, white-faced, wringing his hands. "Mr. Miller, I had no idea. If you'll just let me explain." James turned to him, cool and unblinking. "What would you have done if I wasn't the owner?" The manager swallowed, his lips working. "We have procedures. Fraud is on the rise. James let him squirm, the power shift unmistakable. "So a black man with a platinum card means call security?" "Sir, you were just following your gut," James finished, voice icy. "That's the problem." Callahan stepped between them, the peacemaker now. "We'll handle this, quietly." "No need to involve," Kayla interrupted, her voice sharp. "Everyone saw. They heard him. You can't hide it." James looked at her, and something inside him softened. Her courage, her refusal to shrink. Maybe she was more like him than he realized. Callahan tried again, this time with a note of pleading. "James, please, let us make this right. We can compensate." James shook his head, his eyes blazing. "You can't buy this away. Not for her. Not for me." He took Kayla's hand, and together they walked out of the office, past the manager, past the CEO, past the staff who had shrunk into shadows. In the elevator, Kayla squeezed his hand, and for the first time since the nightmare began, James felt something other than humiliation. He felt resolve. They want quiet. I want the truth. The world does not wait for apologies. It spins on, indifferent and unstoppable. By the time James and Kayla reached their suite, the first video was already online. 30 seconds, grainy but unmistakable. Security dragging a black man across his own lobby, a little girl screaming for her father. Within hours, it was everywhere. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, even TikTok. Black father dragged from hotel. Daughter screams truth. The hashtags multiplied. This is his hotel, but privilege isn't protection, nor say his name. James's phone buzzed with messages, some supportive, some hateful, all relentless. Old friends from the neighborhood, journalists, lawyers, activists, employees, distant relatives, even strangers moved by Kayla's scream. He tried to shield Kayla from the storm, but even she couldn't avoid it. At breakfast the next morning, a hotel employee, her hands shaking, delivered a note scrawled in crayon. "I'm sorry they were mean to your dad." Kayla read it aloud, her voice trembling but proud. "See, Daddy, people know what happened. But for every message of support, there were others, anonymous, vicious, dripping with suspicion or glee. Maybe he was stealing. Typical. Bet that card was fake." The words hit harder than fists. He wanted to turn it all off, to make it go away. But he couldn't. Not for Kayla, not for himself. Downstairs, the hotel was in chaos. Reporters camped outside the revolving doors. Guests whispered in the hallways. Employees watched James with new eyes, some apologetic, some defiant, some just afraid. The manager had vanished. The guards were on leave. James attended a hastily assembled executive meeting in the boardroom, a room of glass and steel filled with men and women who wore their fear like cologne. Callahan presided, his voice strained. "We're facing a PR crisis. We need to contain this now. James, if you'd like to make a statement." James looked around the table at the board. Mostly white, mostly men, mostly people who had never known what it was to be suspect just for existing. He thought about staying silent, thought about letting them squirm. Instead, he leaned forward, voice low and clear. "This isn't about statements. It's about a system that let this happen. It's about my daughter, who learned that being rich and successful still means nothing when you look like us." A woman at the end of the table, legal, shifted in her seat. "We could issue a formal apology, announce new diversity training, suspend those involved." James smiled without warmth. "Will that make Kayla forget how she cried? Will it erase what's on those videos?" No one answered. He stood, the room shrinking behind him. "Fix your house, or I will." As he left, whispers followed. Does he mean, will he sell? What if? But James wasn't thinking about selling. He was thinking about fighting. Every wound has a history. Every scar begins somewhere. That night, in the quiet of his suite, Kayla curled beside him on the couch. James let the mask slip for a moment. He stared at the city lights, remembering the road that brought him here. He thought of his mother, cleaning houses on the south side, saving every dollar for his schooling. The way she'd say, "You don't get to choose your battles, James. The world chooses them for you. All you can do is fight the ones that matter." He thought of his first job in a hotel kitchen, scrubbing pans until his knuckles bled. The nights he'd study by lamplight, the white supervisors who'd joke, "You've got hustle, Miller. Shame there's a ceiling." The look on his father's face when he bought his first share in the company, a look of pride and fear, both. And he thought of Kayla, asleep now, her hand still curled around his. He traced the line of her cheek, soft and unmarked, and wondered how long it would stay that way. His phone buzzed again, this time a call from Marcus, an old friend, now a civil rights lawyer. "You want to sue?" Marcus asked, voice tight. "Or you want to make noise?" James thought for a long moment. "I want them to know. All of them. What it means when this happens. What it feels like." "Then let's go public," Marcus said. "Full court press conferences, national media. I'll call Al Sharpton if you want. Let's make this too big to sweep under the rug." James looked at Kayla, at her small, perfect hand. "Do it, but keep her out of the worst of it." "I'll try," Marcus promised. "But once it starts, you know you can't control it." James nodded, more to himself than to Marcus. "That's okay. The truth's worth it." He hung up, the weight in his chest easing just a little. The next morning, the lobby was unrecognizable. Camera crews jockeyed for space with guests checking in, protesters with handmade signs paced outside chanting for justice. Employees tried to act normal, but their eyes kept darting toward James as he passed. A hotel PR woman, a nervous redhead, caught up to him, breathless. "Mr. Miller, I know you're angry, but please, we're asking you not to speak to the press until we have a unified statement." James raised an eyebrow. "You had your statement when you called security. Now I'll make mine." She flushed, mumbling something about protocol, and melted into the crowd. Kayla stayed close to her father, clutching a stuffed lion, a gift from her mother, long since passed. When guests stared, Kayla stared back. When staff whispered, she straightened her spine. They walked through the hotel together, a king and his princess in exile, every eye upon them. A little girl approached, hesitant, holding out a lollipop. "I'm sorry they were mean," she whispered, her mother pulling her away with a strained smile. Kayla smiled back, strong. "It's not your fault." James felt pride and sorrow twisting inside him, inseparable. The pressure mounted, relentless, unyielding. By noon, CNN wanted an interview. So did the New York Times, the Tribune, even Good Morning America. James refused them all, at first, but then Marcus called again. "It's bigger than just you, man. You saw the comments? How many black men own hotels, get mistaken for thieves, get dragged out in front of their children?" James closed his eyes, the answer burning. "Too many." "Let's give them a voice," Marcus said. "Let's make it matter." That afternoon, they held a press conference in the hotel's ballroom. Cameras flashed, microphones jostled. Kayla sat beside her father, holding his hand, refusing to be hidden. James took the podium, his face composed, his voice clear. "I built this hotel. I employ hundreds. I've given millions to charity, to scholarships, to my city. But last night, I was just another black man with a credit card, and that was enough for some people to treat me like a criminal. My daughter watched. The world watched. It's not enough to apologize. We need to change." He told his story, brief, unsparing, unashamed. He let Kayla speak, her voice trembling but brave. "They hurt my daddy, but he's not scared. He's the best person I know." The room was silent. The cameras rolled. The story went viral again, but this time with faces, names, hearts. But for every step forward, the resistance stiffened. By evening, a backlash had begun. Anonymous callers flooded the hotel's phones with threats and slurs. A rival chain ran an ad, "Hospitality for all, no exceptions." Online trolls mocked James, mocked Kayla, mocked the very idea that money could buy dignity. Some employees sided with the manager, whispering about double standards, about special treatment. One of the guards who'd grabbed James posted on Facebook, "Just doing my job. Not my fault he looked out of place." The board called an emergency meeting. "James, you're making this personal. We need to protect the brand," Callahan insisted. "Let us handle this." James shook his head, voice cold. If I can't be safe in my own hotel, no one can. If you won't stand with me, I'll stand alone. The board murmured, uncertain, afraid. That night, James and Kayla ate dinner in their suite, the city glittering below. He watched her eat in silence, watched her try to be normal, watched her shoulders relax when he smiled. After she went to bed, he stood at the window, staring at his reflection, his father's eyes, his mother's jaw, his daughter's hope. He thought of the little boy he once was, cleaning tables for tips, dreaming of a world that would see him. He thought of Kayla, sleeping safe for now. He thought of the lobby, the cameras, the pain, and he made a promise to himself, to his daughter, to every child who'd ever watched a parent be humiliated for no reason at all. Tomorrow, they will know my name. Tomorrow, they will know hers. The pressure had become a crucible. But James Miller was forged for this fight. He'd risen from nothing, had faced worse than this: poverty, violence, discrimination that hid behind laws and grins and policy. He had learned, long ago, that dignity must be demanded, not given. Tomorrow, he would return to that lobby, not as a victim, not as a supplicant, but as the owner. But tonight, as the city glowed beyond his window, as the world argued and wept and raged, James watched over his sleeping daughter and knew the fight was just beginning. There are moments when the world seems to tilt and gravity itself rearranges. This was one of them. The night after the humiliation, the world had watched a child scream the truth. Now, the world was watching to see what would come next. James Miller barely slept. He sat in the dimness of the hotel suite, city lights flickering against the windows, while Kayla finally surrendered to sleep, her cheeks tear-stained, her body curled against the plush pillows. Downstairs, the hotel pulsed with unrest. Reporters called out questions at all hours. The night manager fielded threats, demands, apologies from around the globe. But Miller's mind was far away, spooling backward, replaying every indignity, every microaggression, every moment he'd been told to wait, to prove, to endure. He'd learned to wear patience like armor. Tonight, he felt nothing but purpose. At 6 a.m., he was already dressed, tie perfectly knotted, eyes steady in the mirror. He watched Kayla sleep, then gently woke her with a touch to her shoulder. She blinked, confused, then remembered, her gaze sharpening with that same new edge of anger. "Do we have to go down there?" she whispered. He smiled, soft but sure. "We do. It's ours, and it's time." She nodded, squeezing his hand so hard her knuckles whitened. By 7 o'clock, the lobby was packed. Staff lined the walls, faces drawn with worry or guilt, cameras perched on tripods. Guests craned their necks from behind velvet ropes, cell phones raised. Protesters' chants drifted in through the revolving doors. James walked into the lobby, Kayla at his side, as if nothing had ever threatened to keep them out. People went quiet. All eyes turned. He moved with intention, every stride declaring ownership. The security guards from the night before stood by the front desk, uncertain, their uniforms suddenly costumes rather than badges of authority. The manager, Harvard tie hastily replaced with a Navy one, face ashen, tried to muster a smile. Callahan, the CEO, was already there, flanked by 2 board members and a phalanx of PR people, their clipboards clutched to their chests like shields. He approached, hands outstretched in a pantomime of welcome. "James, if we could," Callahan began. James cut him off, his voice ringing out over the marble. "This lobby is mine. This building is mine. And today, everyone here will hear the truth." A murmur swept through the crowd, relief from some, fear from others. Reporters surged forward, cameras blinked red. James turned to Kayla, kneeling so he was eye to eye. "You want to say anything, baby?" She nodded, stepping up on the velvet chair she'd stood on the night before. She looked out at the sea of faces, some kind, some cold, some simply curious. Her voice was small but unflinching. "You hurt my dad because you didn't believe he belonged here, but this is his hotel. He built it. You thought he was bad just because he's black. That's wrong. I'm not scared of you, and he's not either." Her words hung in the air, electric. James stood, every inch the owner, the father, the man he'd become despite every obstacle. He turned to the manager, the guards, Callahan, and the board. "You have all failed. Failed me, failed my daughter, failed every guest who trusted this place to be safe and just. Callahan tried again, desperation leaking into his voice. James, look, let's make a statement together. We can, James's voice boomed. No more statements. Action. He pointed at the guards. You are terminated, effective immediately. Your actions were not just a violation of policy, they were a violation of basic decency. The guards blanched, but before they could argue, James turned to the manager. And you, 6 years in this company, dozens of reports about profiling, never once acted. You're done here. The manager's mouth opened and closed, a silent plea. James ignored it. He turned to the staff, his gaze sweeping the faces, bellhops, housekeepers, servers. If you've ever been treated as less, come to my office. I want to hear your stories. We will rebuild, but it starts with truth. The employees shifted, glancing at one another, some nodding, some weeping quietly. Callahan swallowed, sweat beating at his temples. James, you can't. James fixed him with a stare that brooked no compromise. You can call an emergency board meeting if you like, but remember who owns controlling shares. The PR woman, trembling, approached with a prepared speech. James took the papers, glanced at them, and let them fall to the floor. He faced the cameras. My name is James Edward Miller. I am the owner of the Levinson Grand and its parent company. Last night, my daughter and I were treated like criminals in my own lobby. We were humiliated, assaulted, and told we did not belong. This is what racism looks like, even at the highest levels of success. Money cannot buy dignity when prejudice still writes the rules. A collective hush. He continued, voice low and thunderous, but here's what else is true. You can try to humiliate me, but you will not erase me. You can try to scare my daughter, but you will not silence her. You can build walls, but we'll walk right through them. My family's name is on this building, and it will stand for justice, not just for us, but for everyone who has ever been made to feel less. He paused, letting the moment breathe. I will be donating $5 million today to scholarships for Black students in hospitality and management and to anti-bias training for every single employee in this company. And I am inviting leaders from across this city, Black, white, everyone, to join me in making sure this never happens again, here or anywhere. Kayla squeezed his hand, tears in her eyes. You did it, Daddy, she whispered. He bent down, pressing a kiss to her forehead. We did it, baby. The lobby erupted. Applause, cheers, sobs. The cameras caught it all. The reversal, the vindication, the power of a child's voice breaking centuries of silence. Outside, the video of Kayla's scream had hit 30 million views. But now there was a new video, her standing tall beside her father, the world witnessing not just pain, but justice. In the days that followed, the world responded. Talk shows dissected the footage. Newspapers ran op-eds on the cost of belonging. Strangers sent letters, gifts, thank you notes. The governor called. So did the president. Other hotels in the chain launched internal investigations. Employees who had hidden in fear now stepped forward, telling stories of bias, of overlooked promotions, of subtle and overt racism. James met with them all. He hired new managers, rebuilt teams, and set new policies that reached far beyond his own hotel. He became a symbol, a reluctant one, perhaps, but a necessary one. His face on magazine covers, Kayla's voice sampled in viral campaigns. They became a beacon for every kid who'd ever watched a parent be doubted, for every parent who'd swallowed rage and kept walking. But inside the hotel, life slowly returned to a new normal. James and Kayla ate birthday cake together in the top-floor restaurant, surrounded by staff who smiled not out of obligation, but out of respect. One evening, as the city glowed below, Kayla curled in her father's lap, looking out at the skyline. Do you think it will ever happen again? She asked quietly. James considered, his voice gentle but unyielding. Maybe. But if it does, we'll fight again. And the next time, there'll be more of us. She nodded, content. I'm glad you're my dad. He smiled, his heart aching and full. Me too, baby. Me too. The lobby remained the same. Marble floors, gold leaf, towering ceilings. But for everyone who entered, it was changed forever. Because now, every guest saw not just opulence, but the price that had been paid for it. They saw not just power, but purpose. They saw a father and his daughter, unbreakable, undeniable, unforgettable. And for the first time, James Miller felt what every human deserves: belonging, not because of what he owned, but because of who he was. The story faded from the headlines, but it echoed in the walls, in the whispered thanks from staff, in the way Kayla walked through the lobby, head high, eyes clear. And every time James entered his own hotel, he did so not as a man to be doubted, but as a man who had demanded and won dignity, not just for himself, but for all those who would come after.